I'm gonna go stand outside for a little bit after recording this video. If anyone asks where I am, just tell them I'm outstanding. What's going on, YouTube? As somebody who has made many new player guides, I wanted to do something different for this one, and that was creating milestones for you to achieve as a brand new player or somebody who's returning on a low-level character. And why that is because it's easy for us experienced players to say, well, just do these 50 to 100 things anytime you either make a new character or you've just started out on the game. But that can be pretty overwhelming, and it also doesn't necessarily need to all be done right away. So that's why in this video, I've staggered out different things that you should do and how you should prioritize them, because at the end of the day, the whole fun of the MMO is exploring, adventuring, becoming a part of the community. It's not doing a checklist of 100 things right off the bat. There are some things that you will want to do immediately, but there are other things that can wait 10 levels, 25 levels, and even 50 levels. And that's how we're going to break them down in today's video. And let's break down these milestones, because each one of these is a different tier based on where you are as a player. Just because, however, something should be done within the first 25 levels doesn't mean you can't do it at level 4. It just means that you generally don't need to start stressing or thinking about that immediately coming out of the tutorial zone or within your first 10 levels. So to break them down, we have things that should be done immediately. There are a few things that you want to do right out the tutorial zone. I've kept this section short and sweet because I don't want to stress players out by giving them a laundry list of things to do as soon as they come out of the tutorial zone. Then we have within the first 10 levels. These are generally things that you want to get in good habits of doing as a player. You want to start leveling up specific skill lines. You want to start doing specific quests, and we'll talk about all of that. Then there's within the first 25 levels. These are generally a bit more laid back things, habits that you want to get into, some upgrades that you want to start getting. And there's within the first 50 levels. Some of these can't even be done until level 45. They're more so things that you just essentially want to make sure get done by the time you've hit level 50. And then we have a DLC exclusive area for everybody who has DLC. If you want to grab these special things that are accessible if you have certain DLCs or chapters owned, it's a good time to do so. The first thing that you want to do when you come out of the tutorial zone is you want to deck out that skill bar, baby. Now, the skill bar is important not just because it determines what attacks and things you can actively use, it also determines what you're going to be leveling up. Your 3 class lines at the very tippy top, you're going to have the first skill in every single one of these. And you just want to spend those 3 skill points that you've received by doing the tutorial to put all 3 of those bad boys on there, because having them on your skill bar determines their leveling. If you actually have multiple skills of the same skill line on your skill bar, you're going to level them faster. So for example, I'm actually leveling up the one with the ultimate faster because by having my ultimate as well as another one of the skill lines on the bar at the same time, I'm increasing the leveling. This is just important to note because as you level up and get to 50, you want to make sure that your class skill lines are leveling with you. Importantly too, your weapon skill line you'll also gain access to pretty quickly, and you just want to throw whatever weapon it is you're leveling on that character onto the skill bar also. You don't have to put too much stress into this. Just make sure that you're generally having a good wide range of abilities on here, and you can continue to swap them in and out as you level up. But by the time you get to 50, you definitely want to make sure that these are close to maxed out, just because that's going to be necessary for your kind of end game farming at that point. You're going to want to have access to all of your classes being 50, and the reason for that is just because the passives are always going to be good, even if the abilities on the bar actually are not. The next thing that you want to do is head down to the Fighters Guild. You will always have access on any brand new character to Glenumbra or any of the other starter zones, including that of Arteron, or if you're all the way over here inside of Stonefalls. This is important because each one of these starter zones has a Fighters Guild, and by joining them, all you need to do is come inside, talk to this individual here, say that you're ready for a challenge, tell them you're ready, and then boom, you're in the Fighters Guild. You might think, Jake, why is this essential that I do this immediately? And why this is so important is because the Fighters Guild is one of the most essential lines for PvP or PvE content. You want to have access to this leveled up to 10 by the time you hit the level 50. It's important to note, though, I said 10 because these guild lines level up differently than those skill lines. So the class lines and the weapons lines that we talked about previously, they level up very differently. What you need to do to level up your Fighters Guild, and this is why I encourage everybody to join early on, is kill undead creatures, monsters, and bosses. And this may shock you, but by doing questing, delving, dungeons, and all sorts of other content, even PvP, you're killing vampires and werewolves, you're going to be leveling this up. So every time you're doing those early quests, you're also going to be passively leveling up your fighter's guild. And by the time you get to level 10 and then 25 and then 50, you probably will have this already maxed out because you've been working on it since you've come out of the tutorial zone. Another fun little thing too is that if you use intimidating presence, you can actually skip certain parts of quests. So that could be a fun little bonus if you're going out and doing quests on a brand new character. Another decision that you generally want to make right out of the tutorial is what attributes you're going to be leveling, and let's break down why that's important, but also why you don't need to worry. The very first thing, we'll talk about why you don't need to worry. That's by the time you hit level 50 in your later 40s, you're going to get access to a free respec token. So any decisions, changes, and things that you make, you can completely respec not only your skills, but your attributes for free. Now, let's talk about why you may want to make a decision early on. And generally, you want to break it down into one of two decisions, Magicka or Stamina. But why is that? And how exactly does this affect everything? Well, to put it simply, your Magicka will determine how many abilities you can use that cost Magicka, but it also determines how much damage you do. So having more Magicka also increases the amount of damage that you're doing, and it's vice versa for Stamina. You can use more Stamina abilities, and then you can deal more damage with stamina-based attacks. So if you find yourself using a more stamina-based character, putting all your points and attributes into Stamina is just a generally better way to go, and vice versa for Magicka. I will also let people know too that ESO has scaling, meaning that if you're level 10 and level 10 armor, you are as strong pretty much as a level 40 and level 40 armor. So you can go out, kill world bosses, go into delves, and do other types of content without having to worry. That's why you're not going to see levels on other things in the world. It's because everything is scaled, and it only becomes detrimental to you once, as you level up, you're going to realize that the armor that you previously wore gets weaker and lowers your attributes versus the newer armor that you're getting is going to raise your attributes significantly. So being in that gear that's tailored to your level is also going to help you out in this regard, but do not worry, just make a soft decision at this point, but anything that you make, you can always be reset relatively easy, and you get to reset it by the time you get 50 for free anyway. I also want to mention add-ons. Now, as a console player myself, these add-ons don't do anything for me because I don't play on PC, but if you do play on PC, there are some fantastic add-ons that you can download that'll be helpful for gameplay as well as early, mid-game, and late game play. I will link in the description this website below so that you can look at the specific ones and get an idea if there's any that you yourself want to use. I personally, when I did play on PC, I like the maps, chords, and compasses ones because they give you access to seeing things in the overworld a bit easier, especially if you don't have that whole area unlocked, which can be pretty helpful. But that's everything that needs to be done immediately. So now we are going to break down all of the things that you should do within your first 10 levels of gameplay. Good habits, good tips, and good things to start getting into. Let's break those down. The very first one that I want to discuss is getting into research. Research is a time-gated activity that's going to be very helpful for you. A lot of MMOs don't require you to get into any sort of research or crafting unless you want to. However, ESO has something important called transmuting. That's where you can run a very difficult dungeon, get the perfect set that you're looking for, get a super rare fire staff, but it's in the wrong trait. And you might think to yourself, oh, that blows. I guess I have to run it 1,000 more times. Well, if you have that trait learned, you can transmute that item into the trait that you need, but it requires you to have all of the research done. So that's where it becomes imperative for you to start researching. And you can see that I have a researchable trait already for my restoration staff. And you will notice too that when you look on these items here, you'll see this little symbol. It's a magnifying glass. If you have that symbol on any item that you're getting, that means that you have a trait on there that you can research. You can also, as you continue to research things and gain levels into your crafting lines, you'll also start to notice too that you can gain more perks and passives that will give you access to researching multiple items and some other good things as well. And those are definitely worth the skill points because getting your research done is pretty important. If you're curious on what the best traits to learn right away are, I would say divines are definitely one of the ones that you want to research right away. And if you know that you're going to be more PvP oriented, I would say impenetrable is definitely also one to start with. If you find yourself thinking that you're going to be more of a medium armor user, I would start with researching medium armor. If you think that you're going to be more of a tanky character, you could start with heavy. And if you're going to be more magicka focused, you could focus on that light armor. It doesn't necessarily matter. Just as long as you get started by your first 50 levels, you'll be ready to go by the time you hit level 50, and you'll have a good chunk of traits already researched. Something also important to note that as you're kind of leveling up, you're going to want to wear different types of armor. Similar to what we talked about for our skill bar, you have to have at least 2 types of a specific armor, this one being medium, for example, to level it up passively. So as you get experience, if you're wearing at least 2 medium pieces, 2 light pieces, and 2 heavy pieces, you're going to get experience across all of those lines. Now, you can wear 7 body pieces, as you can see here, so it's called the 2-2-3 rule. So if you know you're going to be a medium armor user, those are generally the people who are more stamina attack focused. You could do 3 medium pieces, 2 light, and then 2 heavy. If you think that you're going to be more heavy focused, turn that into the 3. And if you think you're going to be more light, turn that into the 3. I will note, though, that it doesn't necessarily matter what you're wearing at lower levels, just as long as you're leveling up these skill lines. That's generally more important than trying to wear something that's overpowered or really focusing on getting stuff that's really good with good traits or armor pieces. Don't worry about all of that. If you're getting quest rewards, you're getting stuff dropping in the overworld, just feel free to slap that on, research, or deconstruct the old stuff. And for items that you're not researching, you really have 2 options once they're becoming outdated. You can either deconstruct them or sell them. I encourage everybody to deconstruct these items because you're going to level up the skill bar below my face here, and you want to try to get these skill lines passively to level 50, just because they're going to give you access to some really neat quests that you can do called daily writs. They're going to be more powerful items and more helpful questing items the higher level your crafting is. So it's good to get in the habit of breaking down old gear as well as researching it. But again, don't stress about doing these. Focus on just using whatever the best items you have are. Try to keep that 2-2-3 kind of going as you level up. Research some, and then deconstruct the others, and you'll be well on your way. Next up, we have do the intro to Cyrodiil quest. By going into Cyrodiil, you're going to see the main story flag, and from there, you're going to be able to complete one mission that explains to you the differences between how Cyrodiil works and all the other goodies and things that you need to know as a Cyrodiil player. This is pretty helpful because it's going to give you access to the 2 PvP skill lines, which you'll see here momentarily. And notably, it doesn't require you to really do any sort of conflict. It doesn't really require you to do anything difficult, and you'll see it right as you load in, and then afterwards you'll gain access to those skill lines. And you can see now we are completing this quest and gaining access to those 3,000 alliance points, which is going to give us access to the assault and support skill lines that we were talking about, as well as 2 skill points. Notably, though, the biggest thing that you want to grab from this is Vigor, especially if you're a stamina-based character. This is one of the best heals in the game. If you're ready to get into things like Battlegrounds, this is a very nice thing to do. If you're trying to get into other types of content, this is also something that you want to start leveling up right away. I will note, though, that you do have to be level 10 on the dot to go into Cyrodiil to do this, but it is still something that I would suggest doing around level 10 because these are some skills that you want to make sure you're leveling up. And to give a brief rundown, you will level up your support and assault skill lines anytime you gain alliance points, whether that's through questing in Cyrodiil, getting kills in Cyrodiil, Battlegrounds, and any other types of AP that you're gaining is going to level these bad boys up. The important thing, though, again, is Vigor, because that's really the most well-used one, but some of these other ones are also pretty helpful as well, such as a Rapid Maneuver, which gives you access to going really fast, and Speed can be pretty helpful. Another thing that you'll notice is the main quest line, where you're the Soul Shriven in Cold Harbor. Now, you may either have the option to talk to the hooded figure, or you may be getting quests inside of the Harborage. These are pretty nice for a couple of reasons. Not only are you getting something that's going to give you access to the soul magic skill lines, you're also going to gain access to the fastest skill points to time ratio. When it comes to questing, there's tons of types of quests that you can do. Daily quests, side quests, there's zone quests, there's main story missions from the soul magic line. There's tons of quests in the game, and some of them give you skill points, whereas others give you different types of rewards. Every single main story mission inside of the game through the Soul Magic line, which is your quest line through the Harborage, will give you a skill point. You'll also notice here too that there is another 0 out of 24. That is the Daggerfall / Glenumbra storyline, and every single zone in the entire game has a main story mission attached to it. By completing those main missions, you will also gain access to skill points. Sometimes every quest will give you a skill point. Sometimes every second or third quest will give you access to a skill point. The important thing is that they are noted by their symbol. You'll notice as you walk through the town that there are tons of symbols all over the place. So what are these other ones? And these are side quests. These are quests that give you access to different types of things, but they do not give you access generally to skill points. Usually they give you a piece of gear from that zone or another type of reward. So after you have completed the actual main story Soul Magic line, I would suggest that you can either watch the video I have on how to play ESO in chronological order if that would interest you, or you can pick your favorite zones, DLC areas, and then get access to skill points by doing the main story missions there. Overall, I think it's a really fun way to level up characters. They also buffed how much gold and experience you get by completing quests, including side quests, so they're generally worth it, even if you need just a little bit more experience and not only those skill points. Another thing that you want to do right away when you're able to is gain access to Mundus Stones. Now, these bad boys are put all over the map, and they can be pretty annoying to go and find, but they give you access to a permanent boost on a character. These can be really helpful because you get access to something, for example, that increases your total stamina, which means you're going to deal more damage. You can gain access to things like health, crit damage, and so on. They are scattered around the world. You can usually find them inside of people's homes, which can be helpful because you can just teleport to those people's homes and pick up a Mundus Stone right away, but you'll also see them scattered around the overworld, and if you're looking for a specific one, you can look it up where it is on a map and then walk over to it and you'll gain access to it like so. You can only ever have access to one perk at a time, but you can seamlessly switch between them. If you had one active and then you switch back to another one, it just swaps out that buff for the other. Another thing that you should start doing within your first 10 levels is start participating in events. Now, it's hard to know what event will be active whenever you're watching this video, or if there's any active at all, because for example, right now there are no events, but let's say the Fallen Leaves of Westweld event has begun. You can see here everything that you can do to participate in this event, what are all the extra rewards, and more importantly, I will always have a video breaking down the important things about these events. Every single ESO event can be participated in by level 10, and the only one that you can't participate in immediately pretty much is Mid-Year Mayhem, because that requires you to be at least level 10. It is essential, and it's created for new players to be able to jump into whatever event is most active during that time period, and the rewards are going to be worth it. And a lot of times there's passive buffs during these time periods as well, such as double XP, meaning that even if you don't participate in the event, you already are participating in the event, because any experience you're gaining is going to give you access to double leveling, which is just overall really helpful. And here's a more complete picture of what Glenumbra will look like when you've done it. But there are some important things to note here. I also want to just kind of highlight things such as this area here, the Bad Man's Hollow. This is what's called a public dungeon. Now, there is a public dungeon in almost every single zone in the game, barring a few. Every single public dungeon is going to give you access to a Sky Shard. You can even see above here, there's a hint as to where it is. Gaining 3 of those will give you access to a skill point. Also, there is a main boss in there. If you kill that main boss, you will gain access to a skill point guaranteed. Note too that there are sometimes multiple bosses in there, and you have to make sure that you are completing what's called the group event. So you can see here, if you slay the giant snake mother in Bad Man's Hollow, you gain access to this achievement, meaning that you have completed the public dungeon, gaining you the access to that one skill point. And skill points are going to be one of the most valuable resources, because as you level up all these crafting lines, skill lines, world lines, guild lines, you know, you're going to need quite a few skill points. So as you quest and go and search different areas, it's worth it every time you stumble across a public dungeon to complete the main bad boy there. Also to the Delves, which are kind of like lesser public dungeons, also gain access to a Sky Shard. You can see here, there's another hint as to where it is. And if you get 3 of those, again, you get access to another skill point. Now we have some things that you should do within your first 25 levels, but the first ones of these will also highlight that, yeah, you could do these pretty much right away as well, but you really don't need to stress about them. The first one here being simply joining the Mages Guild. All you need to do is head across the street from the Fighters Guild and join the Mages Guild. Now, why is that not as essential as joining the Fighters Guild? Well, to level up your Mages Guild line, you need to pick up books in the overworld. It's riveting, I know. And I don't necessarily know how that makes you a higher tier magistician, but whatever. Set all that to the side, because you can already find these books in the overworld even if you haven't joined the Mages Guild. So you don't need to run over here right away and join it, because you're going to be picking them up as you see them in the overworld anyhow. You can still join it right after you join the Fighters Guild. They are across the street, but again, it's not essential. Another thing that you want to start doing is leveling up your mount at a stable master. There are cooldown time periods on this, and you generally want to kind of pick between 2 things: carrying capacity, speed. So carrying capacity means that at all times, your character has access to a secondary bag slot. So if I was to upgrade this right now, I gain access to another inventory slot in this character only. If I use the speed one, anytime I am mounted, I will be a little bit faster. It's very tricky based on which one of these you think is more essential. I lean towards, if you don't have ESO Plus, go with carrying capacity, because you need carrying capacity. If you do have ESO Plus, maybe go with speed. You'll have access to a little bit more bag space and some other bank space, so maybe go with speed, but it's really up to you. The reason why this is kind of within your first 25 levels is you don't really get your first mount until level 10 anyway, so you can't really level it up beforehand unless you have like a pre-purchase mount to begin with, but you could definitely do it at lower levels if your character already has access to a mount. For example, you bought a purchased version of the game where you already have a mount and you're not getting your free one. It's important to remember too that the mounts, unlike they were 10 years ago, are not independently leveled. So this is across all of your mounts. So if I was to pull out my camel, if I was to pull out a horse, they are the same speed level ups, stamina level ups, and carrying capacity level ups. It used to be you leveled up an individual mount, not anymore. Again, these are all universal for that character, which is again for that character. Speaking of bag space, you're going to find different bag merchants scattered around the world. Notably though, this is where they are inside Daggerfall, one of these starter zones. Just by talking to them, you can buy bag space upgrades. These are going to progressively get more expensive, but you can see the first couple ones are exceptionally cheap, and I definitely encourage you to get these as you go, just because having extra storage space is just overall going to make your life a lot easier. Another thing that you can do for more space is head down to the bank, any bank, and you can talk to the banker and they can increase your bank capacity. Mine is already maxed out, unfortunately, so I can't upgrade it anymore. But it's important to note that you can utilize this to gain access to even more of those inventory slots, which are going to be pretty helpful overall. Another fun little thing that you should start doing within your first 25 levels, head down to the activity finder and go to endeavors. Endeavors are daily and weekly things that you can do for a premium currency that's just going to be helpful for you in the long run. You can see here that there's dailies completed 0 out of 3 and weeklies completed 0 out of 1, because while there are 5 things here, you only need to complete 3 of them to max out your dailies completed, and you can only do up to 1 for your weeklies. If you go to the Seals Endeavor store, you can see that you gain access to the Crown Crate items, which can give you access to mounts, other cool cosmetic items, and tons of other things that you may find helpful as you go through your Elder Scrolls experience. This is also a great time to note that you can do your daily random dungeon, and you can also do your daily random battleground. Now, a lot of people find both of those 2 things very intimidating. However, both of those are a lot easier than people give them credit for. Let's start with the dungeon. At levels 25 and below, the only dungeons you're going to get access to are basically Cupcake Mansion, the dungeon run. You will not struggle at all to complete that dungeon. In fact, the people who are also random queuing for dungeons will be blessed to see a low level, because that means that they have gotten into an easy dungeon because you are queuing into that dungeon. They're not going to get access to the harder DLC ones, the harder versions of base game ones. They're only going to have to roll for those easier ones. So sitting and queuing for your random normal dungeon not only gives you access to tons of experience, it gives you access to transmute crystals, which we touched upon a bit earlier. Those are a premium currency that allow you to change one trait for another on an item or reconstruct previous items that you've deconstructed. You're also going to get access to items that you can sell, as well as research, which is just overall going to be great for you. And Battlegrounds admittedly are a bit more finicky because you're going against other players, which always can be a bit of a chaotic nightmare, but the rewards are still worth it because a daily dungeon can still take a little bit of time. Battlegrounds usually end even faster and give you the similar rewards, including those transmute crystals, things that deconstruct. You're also notably gaining alliance points, which is a whole currency you can utilize to not only level up your support lines passively, but gives you a currency that you can spend on some good items down the road. Why I encourage people to do this is just because it starts getting you into a bit of a PvP mindset, and it's a bit easier than people give it credit for. I will give you some quick tips on this, but I have whole video breakdowns on getting started with Battlegrounds, but the heads and tails of it is very simple. Have access to a heal. Being able to heal yourself makes things easier because you can make yourself not dead. Then you want to have access to what's called a spammable. That's just something that's pretty cheap but pretty hard hitting that you're going to use primarily throughout the fight. You're also going to want access to an execute. That is anything that does more damage when people are of lower health. You will find, again, all of these within your class and weapon line abilities. Also, getting access to something that makes you go faster is very helpful too. If you have access to blinks, teleports, speed ups, those also going to be helpful. And then a stun. Being able to stun people can be pretty helpful because if they're stunned, well, they're not attacking you, and that's pretty helpful. I would also encourage you to complete Room to Spare within your first 25 levels. It gives you access basically to a studio apartment, breaks down how housing works in the game, and gives you kind of some pointers and tips and ways that you can utilize them. Honestly, with the new housing system and way that you can go and look at other people's houses as well, I think it does an even better job of explaining all of the things and ways that people can decorate their houses, because you're going to see some nice ones in here, whether they're thematic, whether they're helpful. You can also gain access to people's guild halls when you start joining other player guilds, and you can see how people decorate those as well. And overall, housing is just a pretty helpful way because you can put helpful stations inside the front of your homes. Even if you're only living in a studio apartment, you can also put bankers there, merchants there, storage containers that you can unlock using Telvar, Writ vouchers, or crowns. And overall, it's just really helpful. As we talk about skill lines, let's talk about vampirism and werewolfinism. Now, I have a whole video that breaks down should you be werewolf, a vampire, and I generally update these yearly as they do get tweaked, changed, and so on. But here's the 1,000-foot overview. If you play PvP, generally you want to be a stage 3 vampire. Going and becoming a vampire could be generally pretty helpful for you. That's pretty much all you need to know. Very little PvE content requires you to be a vampire. You do get access to some really cool things, though, on classes that don't normally get them, such as Mistform, which is essentially a teleport, which can be pretty cool on classes that can't teleport. But mostly, it's a PvP thing. Now, should you be a werewolf? Do you want to get teabagged in all PvP conflicts? Werewolves are probably considered the easiest plug-and-play PvP class in the game. Overall, though, it's not very what's the way to politely state this? It's not very encouraged to make people werewolves because it's a very linear type of gameplay. You only get access to one skill bar. Everybody knows the skills that you're generally doing, and it's generally looked down upon. Werewolves don't really have any real major PvE utilization. People used to run werewolves through arenas and stuff like that, but generally it's just easier these days to just do your normal class abilities. And if you want a super easy plug and play ability to 1 or 2 bar arena, just be a Templar really at this point. But what is helpful is that these do take a long time to level up. So getting to vampirism level 10 and werewolf level 10 is a pretty time consuming process that does level up by killing things as werewolves and vampires. So it's a very slow grind to level 10, which is the max level for them. Is it worth it? It will depend on you. And again, check out those videos breaking down should you be a vampire or a werewolf in a specific year, because they're a great helpful tool. as to breaking down the specifics and the nitty gritty, but this is a general consideration that I would make before you hit level 25. These next things are things that you should generally do before level 50. Some of them, including the first one we're going to talk about, can't even be completed until level 45, but you still want to do it sooner rather than later. So the perfect segue into that is we're at the Undaunted Enclave. You're going to get invited here once you hit level 45. You're going to come here. They're going to explain to you what exactly they do here. But a quick overview is essentially by getting this little guy here, you're going to get access to pledges. Pledges are you run a specific dungeon and you get a currency, Undaunted keys, and that gives you access to these things called monster sets. You get one monster set, the helmet, every time you complete a veteran dungeon from that specific dungeon, and you get access to the shoulder by spending, well, these keys to get these shoulders. So you can see here that you have a chance to get one of two. That's because every dungeon is linked between two of them. And overall, this is an essential currency whenever you want to start leveling in the game. You're usually going to know what monster set is recommended to you, generally based on the build that you're kind of starting to follow. Once you get closer to level 50, you're probably going to be looking at a specific build that says, hey, you want to have the slime crawl, you want to have battle orgs, etc., etc. And to segue into that, we have looking at ESO builds. This is Hack the Minotaur's website, one of the websites that I link in my description below because it's a great place to find different builds for people. And generally you want to start mimicking these as you get closer to level 50, either because you want to know what set should you start saving, or what are some things that you need to know about a specific character. Let's say you're playing an Arcanist. You can see here there's going to be different options for you, including a 1-bar Arcanist build, which can be pretty helpful because a lot of people like that. Here you see Deadly Strike. Deadly Strike is a very cheap set that you can use to get with Alliance points. If you want to get Alliance points, you want to start making sure you really definitely do those daily battlegrounds, because then you could start buying this set immediately. And Order's Wrath is a crafted set. And Slime Crawl is one of the base game dungeons that you'll probably find yourself farming 1 or 2 times if you're randomly queuing into dungeons as a kind of moderate level. So that's why it's kind of helpful to know, hey, these are the things that I'm going to start saving and keeping and start working towards. You can also definitely start here as a brand new character, because you might want to say, oh, you know, what race is recommended? You know, what are some other things that are recommended? You can see here the Munduses, which we talked about earlier. And overall, these are just great places to go. I don't like to overwhelm new players by having them go here immediately, but there are definitely going to be some of you watching this video that want to know immediately, what are the sets, what are the skills, what are the races, and what do I need to know even before they've even downloaded the game. The Elder Scrolls Online does not just have guilds that you can join, such as the Mages Guild, Fighters Guild, and so on. You also have guilds that you can join by other players. You can see that there's multiple different types, and I generally suggest that everybody joins a trading guild. I would generally encourage you to join ones that don't have any dues. Also, a lot of guilds will run social events. You'll have access to players to give you different advice, as well as types of content. If you need help getting a specific set, if you need help finding a specific Mundus stone, maybe you need help killing a world boss or a boss in general, you can find access to players that can help you. Also, 2 guild traders give you access to sell your items to other players. And as a brand new player to the game, you will be getting stuff from the overworld that is pretty valuable. Notably, as you're picking up stuff, keep an eye out for mundane runes, heartwood. If you're fishing, you could sell your fish, you could sell your perfect row, your luminous ink, which we'll talk about here a bit later, is also very valuable, and so on and so on. It's a great way to become more socially antiquated with the game, and it will also give you access to other players that you can socialize with. Because at the end of the day, people do play this solo, but it is an MMO. Another thing that you're going to start doing is learning how to do crafting writs. Now, unfortunately, these people are a bit scattered all over the place, but one of the individuals I definitely encourage you to go to is talk to this individual here inside of the Mages Guild. You can tell him that you're ready for certification. He's going to have you doing things such as provisioning, which is very helpful because provisioning is one of the ones that's a bit more annoying to level up. You may remember that I encourage you to deconstruct a gear, but unfortunately, you can't deconstruct a birthday cake. I mean, maybe with magic you could, but unfortunately, if you want to level up your provisioning, you're going to have to actually go out into the real world and craft different recipes. The biggest way to do that is becoming certified as a crafter, talking to Daniel for provisioning. You can also talk to Milaneth outside of the Fighters Guild, and she can certify you as a blacksmith, clother, and woodworker. And if you have access to the Somerset DLC, you can head down to Alinor and talk to this little rapscallion here, and he can teach you how to become certified inside of this area for jewelry crafting. Jewelry crafting is very nice to do because jewelry crafting can be a very annoying one to level up, also because you're not going to be getting jewelry as often as some of the other items, making it a bit more finicky to level up. And once you have these, you can start doing your daily crafting writs once you've completed these quests. And from there, you get access to these daily crafting writs. Now, these are actually available in every single zone and can be done once per day. You'll gain access to these clothing writs, jewelry writs, woodworking writs, etc., as well as provisioning, enchanting, and alchemy ones. Once you've done those certifications that we talked about, you can start doing these ones daily. These are important for two reasons. One, they will give you tons of experience if you are not all the way leveled up. So let's say, for example, I was not fully leveled in my woodworking. Well, this is a perfect way to level up my woodworking because by turning in those quests, I'm going to get tons of experience towards them. So leveling up provisioning, alchemy, and enchanting can be really annoying, and it's pretty important that you start to level those up because, for example, not only are you going to be able to see herbs and fungi in the world, you're also going to get potions that last longer. You can get extra potions when you make them, and so on and so on. And from there, you definitely want to have those passives, and for provisioning, it's a similar story. If you're using provisioning stuff, you want it to last longer. That just seems like it's something that would be very helpful for you to have. So doing your daily writs is a great way to level them up. But if you're already maxed out with your passive, so I'm 10 out of 10 for woodworking, turning in those quests gives me access to gold experience for my character, not just crafting experience. It also gives me access to potentially gold upgrade material, jewelry surveys, master writs. It can give you access to golden items, that you can use to then upgrade all of your other resources. So overall, it's worth doing. People do these every single day across all of their characters. If you do all of your writs, not only are you getting access to 5,000 gold per day, you're getting tons of experience, and you're potentially rolling for gold upgrade materials, those survey maps, which can be great to get additional resources for yourself. And it's just overall a really good time to experience to gold ratio. Now we're back inside of Cyrodiil again. Now Cyrodiil, as you can see, has a campaign that lasts on a 30-day rotational period that's only different inside of Mid-Year Mayhem during the PvP event. And you'll see here end of campaign rewards tier. But what does that mean? Well, it basically determines the rewards that you're going to get, with 3 being the highest. If you get to rewards tier 1 on a character, because these are all character dependent, you only need to get about 20 to 25,000 alliance points, and you're going to get access to 50 transmutes, some gold, and some other things that you can deconstruct or use for research. It is a very nice way to get some nice rewards for yourself, and it's generally not very hard. I hear you thinking to yourself, Jake, PvP, Cyrodiil, that sounds like it could be pretty chaotic, but here's the thing. You can do quite more than just killing other players. You can repair walls, doors, you can shoot trebuchets, you can shoot fire pots. There are so many other things that you can do that don't require you to have overpowered, broken PvP builds. And just by generally being involved, you're going to get access to all of the alliance points. And you don't need to be that involved because getting to that threshold that you need to get to is very quick to get to. And this is actually character dependent. So just make sure you set it as your home campaign. And then from there, you can get to rewards tier 1 on multiple characters. If you have 10 characters, that could be 500 transmute crystals. So you have gotten half of the maximum amount that you can even have just by getting to rewards tier 1. If you have a PvE tank, you could certainly take them in there, throw them on a trebuchet, repair some walls, shoot some fire down on people, and you will be good to go. Next up, we're going to talk about some DLC stuff. Now, this is not to say that you 100% need to own these DLCs or these are imperative, but if you do have them, these are some nice helpful bonuses that you're going to get access to. So let's break those down. The very first one is if you have purchased either Necrom, High Isle, or the Blackwood chapter, you will gain access to a couple of companions that you can find here. Now, Even if you have them unlocked on another character, you will have to accept the quest for them again, but you can see that if you just click accept quest, it starts the quest for you to go out and find them. Depending on which chapters determines which ones of these you have access to, but you can see I now need to go meet Azander and complete his quest. From there, I will gain access to a permanent follower that I can level up and use to kill other people around in the overworld, which is very helpful. Having somebody that could be your tank, your healer, an extra DPS when you fight world bosses, delve bosses, quest bosses, it's just pretty helpful. And if you have access to any of those 3 chapters, check out my video on which companion is right for you because they all have their own little passives and bonuses. Another thing that's helpful too is if you have access to DLCs is head down to the Gold Coast, and by here you can talk and start the Dark Brotherhood storyline. When you have the Dark Brotherhood storyline, you're going to gain access to what's called the Blade of Woe, which is a very helpful tool that will give you access to a one-shot that you can use to kill certain types of enemies, including humanoid ones, by just hitting them in the back. And you can see here, this is how it looks. You can see we're inside a little bit of an enemy encampment. Boom, we've just one-shot them, sucked up all the XP that they're worth, and we can loot them without having to ever leave stealth. You can also use this as a vampire. So if you don't have access to any sort of DLC, you can still use this as a vampire if you would so choose to, as long as you're not like me and getting caught while you're trying to record the video. And here's how it looks if you're feeding on somebody. You get access to the same button combination, and instead of using the Blade of Woe, you feed on them as a vampire. This raises your vampirism stage 1 level, and it can be a way to also insta-kill certain bosses, enemies, or civilians if you're trying to loot them to get a specific item. And as this character is, you can have access to both the Blade of Woe and Vampirism. The Blade of Woe will usually proc as you're a little bit closer behind an enemy, and the Vampirism one will proc usually if you're a little bit further away. Another essential line that I would encourage you guys to do is if you have access to the Gold Road expansion, I would head down to Skingrad and talk to Adept here, because he's going to give you access to a really cool skill line that is going to give you access to scribing. Now, scribing is a very long and drawn out process, so let's summarize why you might want to start this quest line as a brand new player. And after you complete that quest, you're going to be brought into this room here, where each one of these is going to have a side quest. Each of these is a different wing. Each of these wings gives access to different rewards, and notably, you're going to get luminous ink. But importantly, you're going to get access to the ability to get luminous ink from different sources. For example, this is the wing of the Indrake, and luminous ink will now drop from defeated enemies once you have completed this wing. Note from here too, once you've completed this one, the wing of the Netch, you will then get it from crafting resources. So picking stuff in the overworld now has a chance to get you luminous ink. Then you have the Griffin, who anytime you open a heavy sack, you have a chance to get luminous ink. And then there's the Dragon, which will drop ones from chests every so often. Luminous ink fluctuates a lot in value, but it still is worth 10 to 50,000 gold on console. And you're going to get 12 just by completing this missions. And by completing all of these, you also have a chance to get them now doing all different types of content that you're just naturally going to be doing. Plus, it does also unlock the whole scribing system, which gives you access to scripts, which when you get duplicates of, you can sell for almost 1,000 gold, 999 to be exact. You can then also use the scribing system to then make skills, which is just also very helpful because they can do all sorts of really neat things. It's its own dedicated video, but the important thing is as a new player, if you have access to this chapter, I would do this sooner rather than later. Another way that you can get some pretty helpful things for yourself early on is by doing the Somerset storyline. Just head over to here in Somerset. You'll have this way shrine, and this person will literally run up to you and say, hey, the main story mission is here. Jump on in. And by doing that, you're going to gain access to the Psijic Order skill line by doing the second and third mission of the main story. And from there, then it will split. So you can then finish the Somerset storyline, or you can go off and you can complete the Psijic Order line. The Psijic Order line is really helpful because it gives you access to the ability to see Psijic portals in the overworld, which are just a great source of resources, mundane runes, and other such things. And that's why overall, I think joining it early on is generally pretty beneficial. And finally, to wrap up, you can head to Solitude inside of Western Skyrim if you have the Greymoor expansion, and you can join the Antiquarian Circle. I will note, though, that the Antiquarian Circle, there's no benefit. You're not going to get any super secret luminous ink drops that are worth tens of thousands of gold. You're not going to be leveling up a skill line passively by doing content that you normally would. Really, the only reason to join these guys is you gain access to a nice gold method that you can gain access to that doesn't require any sort of outside trading. You don't have to interact with other players. You basically just dig up treasure and sell that treasure. And then that's a really good gold method that a lot of new players like, because you don't have to dive headfirst into the guild trading system, which admittedly can be a little bit frustrating for some players. And every single zone will have access to a green, blue, and purple lead that you'll be able to scry. And I would encourage everybody to do their green, blue, and purple once they are leveled up. And then if you need a repeatable area, because you can only do the purples one time because they sell for 5,000 gold each, go to Artaeum and then farm the greens and blues there on repeat. It's also the fastest way to level up because you can only initially do greens and you can only initially do blues. And then you can do the purple treasures from there. There's a whole scrying skill line breakdown that we have on our page that you can take a look at. But overall, it's relatively straightforward. It's just a nice way to farm and do some nice little mini games, get some gold, and not have to worry about dealing with the entire ESO economy, which admittedly can be a bit daunting. And everyone, that is where I'm going to leave you here today. I hope this was helpful, and thank you to everybody who helped create this list on stream, because we actually made this list together on stream while we were talking about when should new players start doing X, Y, and Z thing without trying to create a very stressful to-do list or checklist, but more so just a kind of convenient, hey, you might want to start doing these things as you kind of get into these different types of level milestones. So thank you guys so much for that support. Thank you to everybody who's here watching me say these words out loud, because that means that, hey, you got to the end of the video. And as always, we're doing our 3 giveaway drawings. All you need to do to enter is leave a comment in the comments below. Give me some additional tips. Tell me some things that you think new players should do by different types of milestones. If you have any, I will pin the best ones in the comments below. Second thing is just be subscribed, and for an additional entry, follow on both Twitch and Twitter, which are linked in the description below. And the third thing is look for a hidden word to be flashed upon the screen throughout this month. It will be on one video. If you're the first person to find and comment that word, you will win. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.